Hi friends, welcome to lesson 4, principal types of stratification systems, caste and class. Introduction. Social stratification is a characteristic of society, not simply a function of individual differences. Social stratification as a social system analyzes the distribution of social resources among categories of people. In primitive societies, simple social stratification existed. In more technologically advanced societies where people produce a surplus over and above their basic needs, social resources are unequally distributed. This distribution to various social categories is regardless of people's innate individual abilities. Social stratification assumes different forms in different societies on different criteria. These forms are slavery, estate, class and caste. Slavery, as we have discussed in our previous session also, is the earliest form of social stratification. Social class had its origin in the feudal estates of Europe. Classes are the consequences of economic factors, and caste is the social stratification which exists only in India. Caste is an endogamous ascribed group in which different castes are arranged in hierarchy and each caste has a fixed occupation. Objectives. After completion of this lesson, you will be able to understand the meaning, characteristics, functions and changes in caste system. You will be able to understand the concept, characteristics of class and Indian class structure. You will also be able to analyze the caste class distinction. So let us begin by a discussion on caste, meaning, definition and characteristics. Caste is deeply rooted in social institution in India. There are more than 2,800 castes and subcastes with all their peculiarities. The caste stratification of the Indian society had its origin in the Chaturvarna system. According to this doctrine, the Hindu society was divided into 4 main varnas: Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras. The Varna system prevalent during Vedic period was mainly based on division of labor and occupation. G.S. Ghurye says, any attempt to define caste is bound to fail because of the complexity of the phenomenon. The traces of caste are found in ancient Egypt, Japan, Rome, Burma and Persia. Caste is closely connected with Hindu social organization, philosophy and religion. The word caste owes its origin to the Spanish word casta, which means breed, race, strain or a complex of hereditary qualities. The Portuguese applied this term to the classes of people in India known by the name of jati. The English word casta is an adjustment of the original term. The Sanskrit word for caste is varna, which means color, and the popular word is jati. The Varna system is based on division of labor and occupation, and caste system owes its origin to Varna system. However, they are not the same. Varnas are only 4 and castes are many. When we discuss about some of the definitions of caste, Sir Herbert Riley says, caste is a collection of families bearing a common name, claiming common descent from a mythical ancestor, human or divine, and professing to follow the same hereditary calling and regarded by those who are competent to give an opinion as forming a single homogeneous community. Charles Horton Cooley defines, when a class somewhat becomes strictly hereditary, we may call it a caste. E.A.H. Blunt defines caste is an endogenous or a collection of endogenous groups bearing a common name. Ketkar defines a caste is a group having two characteristics. Firstly, membership is confined to those who are born members and include all persons so born. Secondly, the membership is forbidden by all inexorable social law to men outside the group. Several factors have been responsible for growth of caste system in India. Let us try to understand them. We will not have a detailed discussion, some of the factors. Like for instance, geographic isolation of Indian peninsula led to the consolidation of existing practices which were prevailing. Apart from this, influence of religion in terms of beliefs in reincarnation, doctrine of karma, etc. established immense faith in caste system. Existence of many races in India also contributed. Caste system was believed to be the means by which racial purity could be maintained due to practice of endogamy. Unchanging rural social stratification, unwillingness of rulers to enforce any reforms or new practices, and lack of education also contributed. Let us now discuss about characteristics of caste system. Caste is a hierarchical division of society whereby there is arrangement of various castes with Brahmins at the top. Caste is hereditary in nature and thus is example of ascribed status. Ascribed status is that status which individual attains by birth. Caste is a segmental division of society. Caste divides the whole society into separate groups in which the status, social duties and rights are different. Each caste had its own rules and regulations, and if a member breaks, he is expelled from the caste. The moral allegiance to caste came first and then community. In the urban industrialized societies, this has lost its rigidity. In rural India, it still persists, though changes are coming. Each caste has its own customs, traditions, practices and rituals. There are also caste panchayats or councils to regulate the conduct of the members. The functions of caste panchayats are basically to make members comply with caste rules and regulations, settling caste related disputes, giving punishments to those who violated caste rules and obligations, like arranging dinner party for the fellow castemen, imposing fine, purification, pilgrimage, outcasting, etc., and also working for the welfare of caste members. A very important characteristic of caste is restrictions on food habits. A Brahmin would accept pakka food, that is food cooked in ghee, only from some caste lower than his own, but he would accept kacha food, that is food cooked in water, from people belonging to his own caste. Any kind of food that is prepared by Brahmins is acceptable to all caste people. Restrictions on social relations. The idea of pollution is an inherent characteristic of caste system. Touch of a lower caste man would pollute a man of higher caste. Even their shadow is considered enough to pollute a higher caste man. This led to untouchability over a period of time. Social and religious factors of caste. Some lower caste people suffered from certain civil, social and religious disabilities. Some higher caste people enjoyed certain privileges. Generally, the lower castes are made to live on the outskirts of the city. In fact, during Peshwa rule, Mahars and monks were not allowed within the gates of Pune before 9 am and after 3 pm because the human bodies would cast long shadows. They were not even allowed in temples and other public places. On the other hand, Brahmins had monopoly on the education and teaching. Restrictions on occupational choice. Some occupations are considered to be superior and sacred, while certain others degrading and inferior. Occupations were almost hereditary. Thus, individual talents, aptitudes, interests, enterprises, abilities were neglected. There were strong notions of purity and pollution associated with caste system. Restrictions on marriage. We all know that caste is an endogamous group, that is, marriage of an individual to take place within his or her own caste. Intercaste marriages are prohibited. I would say it were prohibited. But when we talk about marriages, Sapinda and Sagotra exogamy were also followed. Pinda means common parentage. 5 maternal and 7 paternal generations are considered Sapinda and they cannot intermarry. Sagotra exogamy, that is marriage within the same gotra, is prohibited. Sapravara exogamy. Pravara means uttering the name of same saint at religious functions are believed to belong to same pravara, a kind of spiritual and religious bond. Now let us try to discuss about functions of caste system. Caste system plays significant role in the life of an individual, community and in the development of social order. With specific reference to individual life, caste helps in determination of social status, fixation of occupation, it guarantees of social security and whole caste comes forward for help, there is control over behaviors, it provides mental security, social status, occupation, selection of mates is determined by birth and life is well channelized. With regard to community life, caste was supposed to help in the maintenance of purity of blood and religious ideas, social status in society, safeguarding culture, that is, every subcaste has its own subcultures. It was this division, stability and harmonious combination of Hindu culture which enabled it to bear the blow of aggressive foreign culture. Caste also helps in development of social order. Caste system was the uniting force which kept together innumerable social groups within India and combined them to act as one of the most coordinated social organizations in the world. Implementation of division of labor was also facilitated. It was also a means of political stabilization. India was again and again invaded by foreigners, but such political upheavals touched Indian society only on its surface. During Muslim invasion, many efforts were made to shatter Hindu social organization. In fact, the rigidity of the caste system prevented it. Caste as a base of Indian social structure. Caste system of ancient India is well conceived scientific socialism. It also determined the kind of education for each community. There are also several merits and demerits of caste system. When we try to understand the changes in caste system in India, we come to know that India has been influenced by the changes in various micro and macro social institutions. The various processes of industrialization, urbanization, modernization and globalization have brought tremendous changes in caste system. The constitutional provisions and safeguards have played a vital role in curbing the evils of caste system. For instance, untouchability cannot be practiced in any form, and its abolition is mentioned in Article 17 of Indian Constitution. Further, various welfare measures and policies of reservation have also contributed in diluting the evil effects of caste system. The development of education and rising caste mobility have brought changes and weakened the rigidity of the caste system. The rigidity in terms of food habits, occupational choices have also undergone changes under the impact of modernization. Caste system, however, is still persisting. Despite intercaste marriages taking place, caste is still a crucial factor in decisions of marriage. The formation of different caste associations and growing intense caste feelings, which has led to caste fanaticism and giving rise to communalism. Despite the weakening of caste in terms of pollution and purity, it is still a significant factor of Indian society. Further, it has ingrained deeply into Indian polity. The political independence of the country, besides the process of industrialization, urbanization, secularization, etc., brought a series of changes in the caste system. These changes are reflected in changes in the traditional features and functions. Let us now discuss about class system. There is no stage in the civilized society in which classes did not exist. While differentiating between social class and economic class and the base for definition of class, McIver emphasized that economic factor is important factor but not the only factor. Brahmins are not richest but socially highly respected. In Europe, traders were richer than landlords but enjoyed much higher prestige. Sociologically, it is the class consciousness which is the basis of class creation rather than economic distinction. When we try to discuss about the definitions of class, Pascal Gisbert defines a social class is a category of group of persons having a definite status in society which permanently determines their relation to other groups. McIver says, whenever the social intercourse is limited by the consideration of social status, by distinction between higher and lower, there exists a social class. Max Weber says, social class has three elements: wealth, which is the material dimension, status, which is the prestige dimension, and how others perceive in terms of respect, and power. Class is such a collectivity which has common set of life chances, and these are described from their property, occupation and income. Let us now try to understand what are the different criteria of class distinctions. Different bases have been adopted from time to time for determining the status of persons. In different societies, different characteristics have been used to assign class. For example, criterion of birth. In feudal and early medieval times, status was fixed by birth. For example, slave masters, nobles and serfs. When we talk about criterion of wealth, it is the most primary determinant. There is also criterion of occupation. It is the possession of wealth for the most part which determine the sort of education an individual is likely to receive, and consequently the range of occupation which opens. There are various factors which determine the relative rank of different occupations. Firstly, the functional importance of an occupation. Secondly, scarcity of personnel for the occupation relative to the demand. There is also criterion of polity. A democratic political system is an important determinant of social system. Some are born to rule and others to be ruled. There is also criterion of education. Social class and education interact in two ways. Firstly, to get higher education one needs money, and secondly, one's amount and kind of education affects the class rank he or she will secure. All these factors are objective factors of class distinction. The subjective factors are psychological factors which includes class consciousness, class solidarity and class identification. Lloyd Warner and Paul Lunt have pointed towards these factors of the subjective criterion of class. For example, belonging to right family, doing the right things, knowing how to act right, associating with right kind of people, living in the right section of the town, one's feelings and beliefs concerning certain things. Let us now discuss the characteristics of class. Class is a status group and achieved status is exemplified by class. Class system is universal in nature. There are different modes of feeling associated with class. Feeling of equality in relation to the members of one's own class, feeling of inferiority in relation to those who occupy higher status, feeling of superiority in relation to those who occupy lower status. These feelings develop class consciousness. There is a strong element of prestige and stability associated with class. Different modes of living or lifestyles which reflect the speciality in preferences, tastes and values of class. Social class is an open group in which vertical mobility is possible. Social class is an economic group where it can be categorized into upper class, middle class, lower class. In fact, Sorokin has differentiated between economic, political and occupational classes also. There is a strong feeling of class consciousness, which is the sentiment that characterizes the relations of men towards the members of their own and other classes. It is the means by which the integration of persons possessing a similarity of social position and of life chances is transformed into a common group activity. Let us try to understand. Caste can also be considered as class on the basis of these parameters. Caste and class are social groups. As there is notion of differentiation and hierarchy in the class in terms of upper class, middle class and lower class, caste reflects a similar differentiation and hierarchy, in fact much rigid and is hereditary. The upper classes or the higher stratas enjoy better lifestyles and life chances. Further, the structures of power relations are such that upper class enjoys more power. Similarly, the upper caste also enjoy more power and higher status. As there are occupational differences among different classes, a similar tendency is seen in the institution of caste. As a group, class has a consciousness. Caste also as a group reflects consciousness. Further, the relations between classes are that of exploitation according to Karl Marx. Caste as a system also reflects the exploitation of the lower caste by that of upper castes. When we try to understand the Indian class structure, the class structure of Indian society can be broadly classified into two categories. social class in rural India or agrarian class structure, social class in urban India or urban class structure. Broadly, sociologists have classified the agrarian classes in India in these terms. Landlords. Under permanent settlement, a new type of landlordism was created, that is zamindar. Under the terms of this settlement, the right of ownership was conferred on zamindar. There are two types of landlords, the zamindar, talukdars and money lenders. Apart from zamindars, tenants. The creation of zamindari settlement transformed the owner-cultivator relationship of pre-British India into class of tenants. Broadly, there were two categories of tenants in zamindari areas: tenants under zamindars and tenants under lease tenure holders during British period. The third class was that of agricultural labourers. There are three types of agricultural labourers. They are the owners of small plot of land in addition to drawing their livelihood from sale of their labour. Secondly, landless and lived exclusively on hiring out of their labours. Thirdly, landless and their status almost that of bondage or semi-bondage. There is also a class of artisans. They form integral part of village community, contributing to the general self-sufficient image of Indian villages. Emerging agrarian class structure. So when we discuss about this, the emerging class structure shows four main class groups. They are ex-zagirdars and jamindars. Secondly, the merchants. Thirdly, peasants and artisans. And fourthly, the agricultural and manual labourers. These classes constitute a hierarchy with the labourers at the bottom and the ex-landlords at the top. The urban industrial class structure comprises of these classes. The managerial and professional occupations are the most highly rewarded, followed by manual workers in skilled occupations, lower white collar employees engaged in clerical jobs, unskilled manual labourers, and middle class is found to be theoretically located at the confluence of economy, society and polity. It is composed of people of different castes, religious communities and professions. It is spread over urban as well as rural areas. It is caught in the cobweb of consumerism. Friends, let us now try to understand the differences between caste and class. Caste class nexus implies observation of caste and class as mutually inherent phenomenon. Though caste class nexus is strong and they are interdependent on each other, there are distinct differences between caste and class. Caste is particular and peculiar to Indian society, but class is universal and found in all societies. Caste is associated with ascribed status, class is associated with achieved status. Caste is a closed system and restricts social mobility, whereas class is an open system. Caste is said to have divine origin, whereas class has a secular origin. There are strong notions of purity and pollution in caste system. There are feelings of disparity in class system. Caste has greater social distance, but class has relatively less social distance. Caste is conservative in nature, whereas class is progressive in nature. Caste is an endogamous group, but class is not an endogamous group. Caste is complex in nature, but class is relatively simple in nature. Caste consciousness is strong in caste system. On the other hand, class consciousness is strong in class system. Friends, let us now summarize this lesson. Caste and class are principal forms of social stratification. Caste is endogamous group with ascribed status, whereas class is exemplified by achieved status. In this lesson, we have discussed about the significant factors responsible for growth of caste system and characteristics of caste. We have also discussed class as stratification system, which reflects distinct characteristics like vertical mobility and class consciousness. Caste as class is also an interesting feature, and caste class distinction helps to analyze the contrasting dimensions of social stratification.